A dramatic and unprecedented event unfolded at a Christmas church service in the UK, where Labour Party leader Keir Starmer faced a stunning public backlash that forced him to leave the gathering. This shocking incident has quickly become a moment of national significance, exposing a pivotal moment in British politics that could reshape the political landscape. The imagery is stark. A leader once seen as promising, now the target of public discontent, symbolizing a deep sense of betrayal felt by the very constituents he claims to represent. Critics argue that this is not merely a political misstep, but a glaring indication of Starmer's disconnection from the British public. For many, Starmer's leadership has become synonymous with a lackluster approach to critical issues, particularly in the aftermath of Brexit, a decision that fractured the nation and left an indelible mark on its democratic fabric. His perceived inability to capture the frustrations and aspirations of the people raises pressing questions that transcend party politics. Is this the collapse of a once-in-a-generation leadership opportunity? As Starmer was met with a wave of discontent within the sacred walls of the church, the scene evoked memories of past political blunders and protests. The event draws parallels to the divisive Brexit referendum, where public sentiment was unequivocal and unyielding. Now the question looms: can the British public forgive a leader who seems to have lost touch with their needs? The urgency of this moment cannot be overstated. The country stands at a crossroads, and the decisions made today will reverberate through history. This incident is not an isolated event, but part of a larger narrative of struggle within the Labour Party. Shifting power dynamics and Starmer's failure to connect with grassroots movements have led many to fear a disastrous outcome in the next general election. Political analysts caution that if Starmer cannot regain his footing, the Labour Party risks fading into irrelevance, overshadowed by more dynamic and relatable figures from within its ranks or rival parties. Public figures and seasoned commentators have weighed in, describing the incident as a glaring reflection of Starmer's controversial leadership style. "He is powerful but divisive," remarked one analyst, highlighting how his approach has alienated the very supporters he needs to mobilize. The implications of this sentiment are profound. If Starmer fails to inspire confidence, the party may face an uphill battle akin to the struggles endured by leaders like Ed Miliband, who also fell victim to public disillusionment. The stakes are extraordinarily high. The discontent expressed in that church is not merely a reaction to a single event, but a broader fight against perceived political apathy. The voices that rang out represent a demand for authenticity and accountability. Critics insist that this is a defining moment, one that could determine the Labour Party's future trajectory and its relevance in British politics. If Starmer cannot address the mounting concerns, his leadership may mark the end of an era rather than the beginning of a revitalized Labour movement. The implications of this crisis extend beyond party politics and touch on the very fabric of British democracy. The public is restless, and the political elite must pay attention. This moment could signify a new era of influence, where the electorate demands transparency, connection, and responsiveness from their leaders. If Starmer fails to rise to the occasion, it could pave the way for a fresh wave of leadership that resonates more profoundly with the hopes and dreams of the people. As the nation reflects on this dramatic turn of events, it is vital for the British public to recognize their collective power. The voices raised in that church were not a fleeting act of dissent, but a clarion call for change. The country is at a critical juncture, and the choices made now will shape its political future for years to come. Complacency will not be forgiven. It is time to stand up, engage, and be heard. This is more than a moment. It is a movement. Every voice matters in the fight for a responsive and accountable government. Together, the people must rally to ensure their leaders listen. The struggle continues, and the future depends on collective action. A dramatic and deeply significant event unfolded recently during a Christmas church service in the United Kingdom, where Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party, found himself at the center of a public backlash so intense that it forced his departure from the gathering. This moment, already being hailed as one of the defining incidents in contemporary British politics, starkly illustrates the shifting dynamics between politicians and the public. What occurred in that church was not merely an isolated act of dissent. It was a potent symbol of growing disillusionment with leadership perceived as disconnected. Keir Starmer's leadership began with promises of renewal and reform, a vision meant to revive a Labour Party reeling from its electoral defeats and internal divisions. Yet this incident, an unceremonious ousting from a sacred and ostensibly neutral setting, underscores a profound disconnect between Starmer and the grassroots constituencies he once vowed to champion. Critics argue that his leadership has become emblematic of a tepid response to pressing national concerns, particularly in the wake of Brexit, a decision that left the country politically fragmented and emotionally raw. Starmer's perceived inability to navigate these divisions or offer compelling solutions has left many questioning his suitability to lead not just the Labour Party, but also a country at a crossroads. The scenes at the church evoked memories of political missteps from history, where leaders, detached from the pulse of public sentiment, faced dramatic repudiation. For Starmer, the optics of being driven out of a house of worship by discontented citizens is a particularly stark blow. It suggests not just a loss of support, but a rejection of his ability to inspire trust and confidence, qualities essential for any political leader aiming to galvanize a divided populace. Brexit. A lingering wound. Brexit remains a central point of contention in British politics, its ramifications reverberating through every layer of society. Starmer's cautious and, some argue, overly legalistic approach to addressing the post-Brexit landscape has left him vulnerable to criticism from all sides of the political spectrum. While some view him as unwilling to take a definitive stance on key issues such as trade, immigration, and sovereignty, others see his approach as symptomatic of a broader failure to engage with the emotional and cultural dimensions of the Brexit debate. For many voters, Brexit was not merely a political decision, but an expression of identity and agency. The inability of leaders like Starmer to articulate a vision that resonates with these sentiments has created a vacuum, one increasingly filled by populist narratives. The incident at the church, then, can be seen as a manifestation of these frustrations, a visceral expression of the public's demand for authenticity and bold leadership. Leadership under fire. The public backlash against Keir Starmer raises fundamental questions about the nature of political leadership in a rapidly changing world. In an era defined by social media's immediacy and the erosion of traditional institutional authority, leaders are held to unprecedented levels of scrutiny. Starmer's leadership style, often described as pragmatic but lacking in charisma, has struggled to adapt to these new realities. His emphasis on moderation and consensus building, while appealing to some, has alienated others who crave a more decisive and inspiring figurehead. The parallels with past Labour leaders are striking. Figures like Ed Miliband, who also faced public disenchantment, were ultimately unable to bridge the gap between the party's traditional base and a broader, more aspirational electorate. For Starmer, the stakes are even higher. The Labour Party stands at a critical juncture, and its ability to present itself as a credible alternative to the Conservative government depends on its leaders' capacity to unite and inspire. The Labour Party's identity crisis. The incident also sheds light on the Labour Party's ongoing struggle to define its identity in a post-industrial, post-Brexit Britain. Historically rooted in the working-class movements of the 20th century, the party has faced challenges in adapting to the evolving demographic and cultural landscape. Starmer's tenure has been marked by attempts to reconcile these competing demands, yet the public's reaction suggests that these efforts have fallen short. One of the central critiques leveled against Starmer is his perceived detachment from grassroots movements and the everyday concerns of ordinary citizens. While he has made efforts to rebuild the party's relationship with key constituencies, such as the Northern Heartlands that swung to the Conservatives in 2019, incidents like this highlight the fragility of those efforts. Without a clear and compelling vision, the Labour Party risks being overshadowed by more dynamic and relatable political figures, both within its own ranks and in rival parties. Public sentiment. A double-edged sword. The voices raised in that church service were not just expressions of discontent, but a reflection of broader societal frustrations. The public's expectations of political leaders have evolved, driven by a desire for transparency, accountability, and connection. While this shift represents a positive move towards greater democratic engagement, it also poses significant challenges for leaders like Starmer, who must navigate a landscape where missteps are amplified and public trust is fragile.